The people of Israel had been slaves in Egypt for hundreds of years. They worked under cruel masters, cried out in pain, and waited for God to rescue them. Then one day, everything changed. God raised up a leader named Moses. With God's help, Moses led them out of Egypt. He raised his staff, and the Red Sea split in two. They walked through on dry land. Pharaoh and his army tried to chase them, but the sea came crashing back, and the people were finally free. But now they were in the desert. There were no cities, no homes, no fields. Just sand, heat, and open skies. They had freedom, yes, but they didn't know how to live as free people. They needed guidance, direction, and a new way of life. God knew that, and He had a plan. The journey to Sinai after crossing the Red Sea, the people of Israel traveled through the wilderness for weeks. They camped in different places, but they often complained. They missed food and water. They questioned Moses. Some even wanted to go back to Egypt. But God was patient. He gave them water from a rock. He sent manna from heaven, sweet bread that fell like dew every morning. He provided meat, safety, and protection. Finally, they came to Mount Sinai, a tall mountain with a rocky peak that touched the clouds. God told Moses, "This is where I will speak to my people." The people set up camp at the foot of the mountain. There was something powerful and mysterious about this place. Everyone could feel it. God calls Moses up the mountain one morning. God called Moses to climb Mount Sinai. The people watched as he disappeared into the mist. Thunder rolled across the sky. Lightning flashed. A trumpet sound echoed from the clouds, though no one could see who was blowing it. God spoke to Moses and said, "Tell the people to prepare themselves. In 3 days I will come down to meet them. They must wash their clothes and be ready. No one should climb the mountain or even touch it. Only you may come up when I call." Moses obeyed. He went down and told the people to get ready. For 3 days, they waited, bathed, and prayed. A sense of wonder filled the air. Something great was about to happen. The mountain shakes on the third morning, everything changed. Thick smoke covered the top of Mount Sinai. Thunder roared louder than before. Fire burned on the peak. The whole mountain trembled. Then the sound of the trumpet blasted again, louder, clearer, shaking the earth. The people were terrified. They backed away, trembling. Moses stood at the foot of the mountain. God called him by name, and Moses climbed. When he reached the top, God spoke. But not just to Moses. God's voice rolled down the mountain so the people could hear. And then, God began to speak His commandments. The voice of God thundered from the mountain, "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." These were the first words of the covenant, a sacred promise between God and His people. God reminded them that He had rescued them from Egypt. They were not alone. They had a deliverer, a provider, a protector. God wanted their hearts to belong to Him alone. In Egypt, they had seen statues and idols everywhere. But their God was different. He was invisible, eternal, and real. This commandment was not just about religion. It was about relationship. God wanted His people to love Him, trust Him, and walk with Him. The people listened in awe. Some covered their faces. Others wept. For the first time, they realized that the one who split the sea was now speaking directly to them. The second commandment, "No idols," the voice of God continued. "You shall not make for yourself an idol, or bow down to them, or worship them." This commandment was clear. God wanted no images, no statues, no golden calves. He wasn't like the fake gods of Egypt, gods made of wood, stone, or silver. God is spirit. He is holy. Nothing made by human hands could represent His greatness. And trying to do so would lead people away from Him. He warned them, "I am a jealous God." not because he was angry or insecure, but because he loved them so deeply. Like a faithful husband wants his wife to love only him, God wanted his people to stay close to him. God promised to bless those who obeyed him, to love their children and their children's children. But he also warned of pain for those who turned away. The people trembled. They knew how easily their hearts could wander. But they also felt God's love, strong, protective, and good. The third commandment, God's name is holy. God's voice spoke again. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. God's name is powerful. It's not just a word. It carries his identity, his honor, his truth. To misuse it was to treat him like something ordinary, like a joke, like a curse. God wanted his people to speak his name with respect, in prayer, in worship, and in truth. Not to swear falsely, not to speak lightly. He warned, the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. This commandment taught them to be careful with their words, to remember that the God who spoke from the fire was not someone to be mocked or treated casually. His name was holy, and he wanted his people to live holy lives. The fourth commandment, a day of rest. God's voice continued. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days a week, the people could work, gather food, build, and travel. But on the seventh day, God commanded them to rest. Because when God created the world, he rested on the seventh day. Not because he was tired, but because he was finished, and he wanted to bless that day. The Sabbath was a gift, a day to slow down, to worship, to spend time with family, to remember who God was and what he had done. God promised blessing to those who honored the Sabbath. It wasn't just about rules. It was about rhythm, a pattern of work and worship, effort and peace. In a world that never stops moving, God gave them a holy pause. The fifth commandment, honor your parents. Then came a commandment that reached into every home. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. This wasn't just about being polite. It was about respect, care, and love. God wanted children to value their parents, to listen, to help, to speak with kindness. In a new land, families would be the foundation, and strong families would lead to a strong nation. God tied a promise to this command, a long life in the land of promise. Respect for parents would bring stability, peace, and blessing. The people nodded. They understood. Family mattered. And so did love and respect within the home. The sixth commandment, do not murder. God's voice was steady and clear. You shall not murder. Life is a gift. Only God gives it, and no one has the right to take it away. This commandment protected the weak, the innocent, the stranger. It taught that anger, hate, and violence were not God's way. God wanted his people to value every life, to see his image in every face. Killing was not just a crime against a person. It was a sin against God. The people listened in silence. They had seen violence in Egypt. They had felt fear. Now God was calling them to a new way, a way of life, not death. God continued speaking from the mountain, you shall not commit adultery. This command was about love, trust, and loyalty. God had created marriage to be a sacred bond between one man and one woman, built on faithfulness. Adultery breaks that bond. It hurts families, it damages trust, and it causes deep pain. God was not just giving a rule. He was protecting hearts. He wanted his people to live in peace, to value relationships, and to honor the promises they made to each other. This commandment also reminded everyone to treat others with respect, not as objects of desire but as children of God. The people of Israel had seen the brokenness of Egypt, where families were divided and immorality was normal. But now God was calling them to something better, to be holy as he is holy. The eighth commandment, do not steal again, God spoke, you shall not steal. It sounded simple, but it carried deep meaning. God was building a community where people respected one another's property, where everyone could live without fear of being robbed, where people helped, not harmed, their neighbors. Stealing was not just taking something that didn't belong to you. It was a sign of a selfish heart, a heart that didn't trust God to provide. God wanted his people to work honestly, to share generously, and to live with open hands, not grasping fists. This command would help shape a society built on trust and fairness, a people who looked out for one another. The 9th commandment, do not lie. God's voice rang out once more. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. This commandment was especially important in a time when justice depended on the words of witnesses. A false word could destroy a life, take away land, or lead to punishment. But it was more than just a courtroom rule. It was a call to honesty in everyday life. God's people were to be truth tellers, people whose words could be trusted. Lying harms. It creates fear and confusion. But truth brings freedom, peace, and confidence. The people nodded. They understood. Their words would matter in the new life God was giving them. The 10th commandment, do not covet. Then God gave one final command, you shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. This one spoke to the heart. It wasn't about actions, it was about thoughts and desires. God saw not only what people did, but what they longed for. Coveting means wanting what others have, their house, their spouse, their wealth, their success. It leads to jealousy, bitterness, and even worse sins. But God wanted his people to be content, to trust that he would provide everything they needed, to rejoice in the blessings of others without feeling less blessed themselves. This commandment pointed inward, reminding everyone that a pure heart matters just as much as pure actions. The people trembled when God finished speaking the 10 commandments. The mountain was still shaking. Smoke and fire surrounded the peak. Thunder echoed, and the trumpet's cry still lingered in the air. The people were terrified. They backed away, trembling. Moses, they cried, please speak to us yourself. If God keeps speaking, we will die. Moses stood firm. Don't be afraid, he said. God has come to test you, to show you his power so that you will respect him and not sin. But still, the people stood at a distance. Only Moses dared to go near the thick darkness where God was. In that moment, they understood something deeply. God was not just powerful. He was holy. His laws were not just rules. They were a picture of who he was, pure, loving, just, and good. The commandments were a gift, a new way of living, a sign that they belonged to God. Moses stays with God as the people stood at a distance, afraid to get close. Moses stepped forward into the thick darkness where God was. The thunder had quieted, but the air still trembled with God's presence. High on the mountain, far above the people, Moses met with God. God wasn't finished. He began to speak to Moses about how his people should live, not just with the 10 commandments, but with everyday guidance. How to treat workers, how to care for strangers, how to protect the poor, and how to build a fair and kind society. Moses listened carefully. His heart was full. He was not just hearing laws, he was hearing God's heart. These laws would shape a new nation, a holy people who would show the world what it looked like to live with justice, compassion, and truth. A covenant is made after speaking with God. Moses came down the mountain to share everything he had heard. The people gathered, listening to every word. Moses explained God's laws, not just the 10 commandments, but many other instructions that would help them live rightly. When he finished, the people cried out, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses built an altar at the base of the mountain and made sacrifices to God. He took the blood from the offerings and sprinkled it on the altar and on the people, a powerful symbol of the covenant, the promise between God and Israel. "This," Moses said, "is the blood of the covenant the Lord has made with you." It was a holy moment. A nation had been born, not through war, but through worship and promise. God calls Moses higher after the covenant was made. God called Moses back up the mountain. This time, he would give him something more, a physical sign of the law. "Moses," God said, "come to me on the mountain and stay here. I will give you tablets of stone, with the law and commands I have written." So Moses climbed once more. This time, he stayed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. He ate nothing. He drank nothing. He was completely in the presence of God. During that time, God gave him detailed instructions, not only about the law, but about the tabernacle, a holy tent where God's presence would dwell among his people. God was not far away. He wanted to live with his people, to be close. The golden calf. But while Moses was with God, the people grew restless. Days passed. Weeks passed. They didn't know what had happened to Moses. They felt lost. So they came to Aaron, Moses' brother, and said, "Make us gods who will go before us." Aaron gave in. He told them to bring gold, earrings, bracelets, and coins. He melted it down and shaped it into a golden calf. The people danced, sang, and worshipped this idol. They said, "These are the gods who brought us out of Egypt." It was heartbreaking. The same people who had just promised to obey God had already forgotten him. The laws had been spoken. The covenant had been made. But now they were turning away. High on the mountain, God saw it all. God's anger and Moses' plea. God's voice thundered with sorrow. "Moses, go down. Your people have turned away from me. They are worshipping a golden calf. I am angry. I will destroy them and make a new nation from you." But Moses fell to his knees. "Lord, please do not destroy them. Remember your promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What will the nations say if you bring your people out of Egypt only to destroy them in the wilderness?" God listened. His anger was great, but his mercy was greater. He chose to show compassion. Moses came down the mountain, holding the 2 stone tablets God had written with his own finger. But when he saw the golden calf, the singing, and the wild celebration, he threw the tablets down. They shattered on the ground. Moses burned the calf, ground it into powder, and scattered it on water. He made the people drink it, a bitter lesson. Then he stood at the gate of the camp and cried out, "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." It was a moment of decision, a moment of judgment, a moment that would shape the future of the nation. The second chance after the sin of the golden calf, the people were ashamed. Their celebration had turned into sorrow. They knew they had broken God's heart. Moses had pleaded for them, but the damage was done. The stone tablets, God's own writing, were shattered. Still, Moses didn't give up. He went back to God. "Please, Lord," he prayed, "do not leave us. If your presence does not go with us, we cannot continue." God heard him. In mercy, he said, "Cut 2 stone tablets like the first ones. I will write my words again." Moses climbed the mountain once more. He stayed there another 40 days and nights. And there, God revealed his heart again, full of compassion, slow to anger, rich in love. When Moses came down, his face was shining with God's glory. The people were afraid to come near him, but Moses reassured them. He told them everything God had said. God had forgiven them. The covenant was renewed. Building the tabernacle with renewed faith and hearts turned back to God, the people were eager to obey. God had given Moses instructions for building a special place, a holy tent called the tabernacle, where God would live among his people. The people brought gifts, gold, silver, bronze, fine cloth, spices, and precious stones. They gave so much that Moses had to tell them to stop. There was more than enough. Skilled workers built everything: the Ark of the Covenant, the table, the lampstand, the altar, and the curtains. Every piece was crafted with care and prayer. When it was all done, the tabernacle was set up in the center of the camp. A cloud covered it by day, and fire glowed over it by night. God's presence was with them. God's law and daily life, the 10 Commandments, were the foundation, but God had also given Moses many other laws. These helped the people live in a way that honored God in their everyday lives. There were laws about justice. Don't favor the rich or the poor in court. Treat strangers and foreigners kindly. Care for widows and orphans. Let the land rest every 7 years. God also gave them holy days to remember his goodness. Passover, the Feast of Weeks, the Day of Atonement. These celebrations helped them pause, worship, and stay close to God. Obedience wasn't just about big things. It was about small choices every day: honesty, kindness, fairness. God wanted every part of their lives to reflect his love. God's presence leads the way as they prepare to move toward the promised land. God did not leave them to figure it out alone. The cloud and fire over the tabernacle became their guide. When the cloud lifted, the people packed their tents and followed. When it stayed, they stayed. It didn't matter if it was for a day, a week, or a year. They waited on God's timing. It was a beautiful picture of trust. The God who gave them laws also gave them direction. Step by step, he was teaching them to follow. Moses reminded them, obey God's voice. He will lead you, protect you, and bless you. Do not turn to the right or the left. Writing it down as the journey continued, Moses began writing everything down. He didn't want future generations to forget what God had done. He wrote the 10 Commandments. He wrote the stories of Egypt, the Red Sea, the mountain, and the golden calf. He wrote the laws, the prayers, and the promises. These writings became the beginning of the Bible, a gift for all who would come after. Moses said to the people, teach these words to your children. Talk about them when you walk, when you lie down, and when you rise. God's word was not just for the past. It was a light for the future. Thousands of years later, the 10 Commandments still speak. They still guide. They still challenge hearts to love God and love others. Jesus, the Son of God, would one day come to fulfill the law, not to erase it, but to show its deepest meaning, love. God's law wasn't about rules alone. It was about relationship, about walking with God and living a life that reflects His goodness. From Sinai's fire to today's hearts, the 10 Commandments remain a gift, a clear and lasting path from slavery to freedom, from chaos to peace, from fear to faith. Subscribe for more interesting Bible stories. Like, share and comment.